We've added a whole lot of things to Good Deals by KLGG, such as bags, smart locks, audio gear, and more. Shop now and check out with Atomi, and IOU pay 0% installment from 50 ringgit and get 10 ringgit off your first purchase with minimum 100 ringgit spent. Visit Good Deals by KLGG in the link below. Picking up an Android tablet is really limited these days as not many tech brands make them anymore. So you either go for the really cheap and unknown brands such as TechLast, AudioCube or Blackview, or you would go for the branded ones like Lenovo, Huawei or Samsung. But let's put it this way, these brands, they don't really have good tablets for the price of below 1,500 ringgit. Thankfully, this brand has finally come back to the tablet game, and it is Xiaomi. So this is the Xiaomi Pad 5, which I've been using for a week already. This is my personal purchase and I feel so compelled to buy this unit because it's been a while since I've seen such a good tablet for such an affordable price. This is the base storage model, which has 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, which costs 1,299 ringgit, otherwise $300 if you were to convert it into US dollars. And I'm here to share my thoughts on why this is the tablet that you guys should definitely buy if picking up an Android tablet is your priority. Now let's start off by talking about the design. The Mi Pad 5 is an extremely premium tablet despite its really cheap price tag. Now as you can see over here, this is a really nice aluminum frame with chamfers all around, and it's pretty similar to the one that's used on the Galaxy Tab S7 and the iPad Air. So if you look at it, there's actually speaker grills around. It is a quad speaker system as you can see, but my favorite is actually the back of the tablet. Now this is the white color version that I picked up. I personally do not like the cosmic black version because I know it is going to get a lot of fingerprints, so I chose this color so that it doesn't get a lot of fingerprints. Of course, most of you would have put it inside a case, but you know, I like to use this tablet just as it is without a case. But of course, this design isn't perfect because Xiaomi obviously wants to make this tablet cheap, so they have to compromise a little bit of things in terms of the design. Now, first of all would be this camera bump right over here. So one would actually think that this is a dual camera system, but it is in fact a single camera system. But because of this mode that's taken from the Mi 11 series, they simply just want to save costs by slapping on an existing design that could probably save them costs. But it still looks nice, which I don't really care about it. Now, another thing that Xiaomi has cut corners on the design is the screen here. As you can see, there's actually quite a sharp edge right over here. The screen pops up because this is a cheaper manufacturing process, so the screen doesn't stay below the frame like some other premium tablets that you have seen. So the problem about this design is that when you first pick it up, you will definitely find that the edges of the tablet feels very sharp and it isn't comfortable to hold at all. But after a week of using, I got used to it and it just doesn't feel as sharp anymore, so it's really not a problem. But if you do really find that an issue, I would suggest putting on a case so that it doesn't feel that uncomfortable to hold when you hold it in landscape. The button placements of the Mi Pad 5 is pretty decent. I can easily reach the volume rocker with my index finger and the power button as well. But one thing I'm disappointed is that the Mi Pad 5's power button doesn't have a fingerprint reader built in, which is the only convenient security feature that you can depend on is to use the facial recognition feature, which isn't totally secure, but you know what, it's convenient enough in order not to have you enter your passcode or whatever when signing into your tablet. Now, another feature that I hope that is available on the Mi Pad 5, but it is not, and that is the headphone jack. Let's put it this way, tablets are not meant to be waterproof, so you know what, removing the headphone jack doesn't make sense at all. You know, even though it has a pretty large battery inside, but I'm sure it can definitely find a place on the frame around here, and Xiaomi could definitely make that happen. I wouldn't say that's a cost-saving measure. The most attractive part of the Xiaomi Pad 5 is undoubtedly the specs, just like any other Xiaomi products out there. This tablet is powered by a Snapdragon 860 SoC, which is a very fast flagship chipset, and it is technically an overclocked version of the Snapdragon 855 Plus. So you can expect really fast performance on this and play games really smoothly on these things. It is mated to 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, and unfortunately there's no storage expansion, which is actually quite a shame if you ask me, but we all know that Xiaomi's flagship products don't really have expansion storage all the time, because in the previous times they do mention that micro SD cards do happen to slow down their products, so they do not want to include that in their flagship products, which is totally understandable. But there's one more thing that it lacks. It doesn't have the latest wireless standards, because this thing still only has Wi-Fi 5. It doesn't have Wi-Fi 6, which is actually surprising because most Snapdragon 860 devices already have Wi-Fi 6 enabled, but this thing doesn't have Wi-Fi 6. But I guess that's not a deal breaker for most of you, because most of you probably don't use a Wi-Fi 6 router at home. The Xiaomi Pad 5 has a pretty decent display, and this is an 11-inch IPS panel with a 2560 by 1600 pixel resolution, a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. It supports Dolby Vision HDR. It has 500 nits of brightness, which is actually pretty good for indoors, and even if used at outdoors, you still can see it pretty clearly, though it's not the best, and it has a lot of reflections out there, but for indoors, it is a really excellent display. Now, this display doesn't have an adaptive refresh rate, so it's either you're using it at 120Hz all the time, or you set it back to 60Hz for saving power. Now, in terms of its touch sampling rate, I would say that it is not too bad. It's not the most sensitive touchscreen that I've ever used, but you can definitely notice the lag as you put your hand on it and you scroll it around. You can definitely feel a little bit of lag, but I would have to say that it's not too bad for it, unless you're thinking to use this for gaming, which I wouldn't advise you to do it. The HDR performance of the display is really decent. As you play Netflix content, you can really notice that the blacks are really deep and the contrast is really good. Even the dynamic range is pretty accurate. But the only thing is that the viewing angle of this tablet isn't really good. So imagine if you're actually watching movies with someone and someone looks from the side, they will definitely notice a little bit of grayish tint when you play HDR content. But I believe that's actually normal for a screen like this, which I wouldn't complain at all, because it is already an affordable tablet and it supports Dolby Vision HDR, which is actually pretty awesome. The quad speaker system of the Xiaomi Pad 5 is so impressive that it shames all Android tablets of the same price range, and even so when you compare to Apple's cheapest iPad and the iPad Air 4th generation. The quad speaker system is full of bass, dynamic range, details, the sound is so rich, and when combined with the great display, you definitely feel that this is the best media consumption tablet that you have bought for below 1500 ringgit. Apart from being a really great media consumption device, the Xiaomi Pad 5 is also a pretty decent gaming device. Even though the touch sampling rate of the display isn't the best, but it can handle graphics-intensive games such as Honkai Impact 3, Genshin Impact, and Asphalt 9 with no issues, and it has pretty smooth frame rates. And this tablet doesn't get hot at all when you game for extended periods, and the only part that you will feel getting warm is the left side right here, which doesn't get terribly warm, and once you snap on the case, you probably wouldn't even feel that the device is hot to handle. The cameras of the Xiaomi Pad 5 is pretty passable by tablet standards. The main camera takes 30 megapixel shots. That's actually pretty decent if you use it for very casual shots in good lighting. And the front camera takes 8 megapixel shots, and I find it to be pretty decent even in video calls as well. So if you're thinking to use this for work, for instance, you want to scan documents or you want to quickly take a picture and send it over an email and all this, I would say that the cameras of this tablet is something that would really work for you. And especially if you are using a tablet for video conference calls, I should say that this camera is way better than any other laptop webcams out there. I haven't been a really heavy user on the Xiaomi Pad 5 for the past week, and this is how the battery level looks like after having it charged for the past 3 days. It is currently at 21% with over 15 hours to go if I don't charge it, and I have to say that this standby time is really impressive for tablet standards. That's because it has a really huge 8720 mAh battery right inside. But one thing that I am disappointed is that Xiaomi didn't include its 120 watt fast charging on this thing, because this huge battery would have really benefited from that really fast charging, because the provided 22.5 watt brick charges this thing really slowly, and it takes almost 2 hours to charge this device up if you really run low on battery. Well, technically it can support up to 30 watts if you happen to have the 120 watt brick, but it also doesn't support USB PD charging, which is actually quite a disappointment, because you will have to use Xiaomi's proprietary charger in order to get up that kind of fast charging speeds. Now, we have talked a lot about the good things of the hardware and performance of the Xiaomi Pad 5, and now it's time for the bad stuff, and which is the software. Now, it's not entirely bad. This thing comes preloaded with Android 11 with Xiaomi's MIUI optimized for a tablet screen, which is actually pretty smooth. There's no bugs, no ads or whatever, which I'm pretty happy. There's also no bloatware pre-installed as well, which is something that I'm really glad of. But just like any other proprietary tablet Android UIs, this UI just isn't optimized enough. Look at it, there's so much wasted space around here. Even widgets don't really support well on this launcher. As you can see, this Microsoft Outlook widget just doesn't fit well on this screen. There's so much wasted space here. So as an alternative, I've actually installed Microsoft Launcher, which is actually a pretty decent launcher that you can actually try to scale the UI to fit more icons and fit more widgets. But here's another problem. When you flip the tablet into landscape orientation, look at these widgets. It has become in such a weird position and it looks so weird. And even look at this, the entire widget looks elongated. It just doesn't look natural at all. But when you turn it back to portrait, it looks normal again. So yeah, Android tablets, they are just not meant to be used in landscape. The entire UI optimization is just so bad that sometimes it really frustrates you. And that's not just the end of the story, because some common apps such as Facebook isn't even optimized for the tablet UI. You can see that all the pictures and icons look so big, and you don't really necessarily need to look at such big pictures when you scroll around your Facebook feed. And when you turn over to landscape, you can see that this is actually a phone user interface. And for instance, if you tap on the marketplace icon over here, you gotta flip the entire tablet to landscape, and that can be pretty frustrating. Of course, there are some apps that are pretty well optimized for the Android tablet UI experience. Now, for example, Lazada, the shopping app, you know, like we all shop every day. Now, this, even though it looks like a typical phone UI, right now it looks pretty big and everything, but once you turn over to landscape, it goes into this split screen mode. It actually shows up on the other side, and this is what I call a pretty optimized tablet UI, and I find this a very convenient feature if you are using apps like Lazada to do shopping. Now, of course, there are other productivity apps such as Microsoft Word, for instance. Let me just show you guys. If I go over to Microsoft Word, as you can see, it's pretty optimized for a tablet UI already. Even Microsoft Outlook is pretty optimized as well. So yeah, overall, I would have to say that the Android tablet UI experience kind of ruins this really great tablet right here. And I really hope Google would continue to improve tablet UIs and maybe ask the developers to really optimize for tablet UIs, because you know what? There are a lot of great Android tablets out there, and the Xiaomi Pad 5 is definitely one of them. So overall, I have to say that the Xiaomi Pad 5 is a very, very impressive piece of hardware. It costs 1,399 ringgit, and of course, if you want more storage, the 256GB model, you gotta shell out for another extra 200 ringgit for it, which I think is a pretty reasonable premium to pay for. Overall, thumbs up for Xiaomi for doing this, and I hope to see more competition from the market to match the value of this tablet. Alright, so that's pretty much for today's video, and that's a pretty quick review on the Xiaomi Pad 5. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and be sure to subscribe for more tech videos coming right up on our channel, and I will see you guys in our next video.